Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Disco Nico here. I'm a 21-year-old guy from Frankfurt, Germany. In case you don't know what it is, I put a picture right there. Now, we're gonna react to Speaking Texas German today. These are people that I guess, fellow Americans that have grown up in Texas or in the States in general, and also learned German while growing up. Now, maybe they grew up bilingual, or maybe they just learned it in school. I'm very curious, so let's get right into it. I'm very curious. Maybe we'll need to learn something, who knows? I'll let you know if their German is pretty good.
The Germans that immigrated to Texas in the 1840s came from all areas across Germany. Most of my grandparents came to Fredericksburg in the 1840s, so my great-great-grandparents
1840, so that was before the Civil War, just letting you know.
arrived in Indianola, came to New Braunfels, then into Fredericksburg.
Okay, so first, so this lady named 3 places so far. Indianola. Okay, I would pronounce it the same way in German. I guess that's an actual, proper English term. New New Braunfels. That's very funny because they use the English word new, and then they use a German town name, which is Braunfels. I don't know if there's actually a Braunfels in Germany, but I'm pretty sure. I guess there is. And then she says Fredericksburg. Now in German you would say Fredericksburg.
And settled here. So as they came into Fredericksburg, settled down, married, the dialects merged with each other. So our German language here has a dialect that is quite different from any other regions
I'm
in
sure.
the United
Old
States.
German.
Wasser ins Haus gehabt. Well, das ist wie wir gestern Abend.
I did grow up speaking German, and I spoke only German until I started school. I learned the home life language. Working in the garden alongside Mother and Daddy, that was in the German language. Going and staying with grandparents, great-grandparents. Getting the eggs with Opa, and
Opa.
doing some
Okay, Opa. She used the word Opa. Opa is German for grandpa.
going with Oma. I learned about
And then Oma is German word for grandma.
helping my mother with the children, so that was done in the German language.
And then another thing, she even mentioned great-grandparents. Now, if you wanted to say great-grandpa or great-grandma, you would say Uroma or Uropa.
Discovered the Texas German dialect in the summer of 2001. Then I stopped in Fredericksburg. I had lunch.
Fredericksburg.
I heard these elderly gentlemen speak an interesting variety of German.
Of course, his name has to be Hans. Probably the only name. I don't think there's any German name that's more popular or more known internationally than the name Hans.
That I've never heard before. So I went up to them and I asked, where are you from and what are you doing here? And they looked at me in disbelief and they said, what do you mean? We've always been here and we speak Texas German and we're 5th generation Texas Germans. And that was the first time that I had not only heard Texas German spoken, but that I also knew that it existed.
Ja, jedes Mal dasselbe.
Jedes Mal dasselbe.
My first
Same thing every time.
experience in learning that the German language in Fredericksburg was quite different than the language in Germany was in 1996.
I'm sure.
When we met with the people from Montabaur here and in Germany. There were words that I used that would bring these smiles to people's faces, and they would say, oh, now I haven't heard that word used since my grandmother passed away.
So
See, that's an interesting fact. When people, it's funny when a language is your native tongue, like German is for me. There's some words that you just never ever use. I mean, you're aware that they exist, you know that they exist, you've learned them in the past, but you just rarely ever use them. Not necessarily because they're old terms or they've, been invented 500 years ago, but just because they've gone out of date, I guess. And so when a foreigner learns German and learns your tongue, your native tongue, from a textbook basically, and we didn't, we grew up with it. We learned it by doing it, right? That's how you learn as a kid. And you learn with pictures and people speaking, all of that. but they oftentimes use words, and it's true. You hear that again for the first time for a long time, just because that's how it's being taught. I hope she mentions some of them, but that's definitely true.
At the end, after 3 to 4 to 5 generations, the dialect that you get sounds a little bit like all the input dialects from 100 or 150 years ago, but it's a unique dialect. So Texas German is different in that it's a mix of different dialects.
I'm sure.
Then Texas German is also interesting because it's been in contact with English for such a long time. Yeah. So you have a long list of hundreds of words that have been borrowed from English into Texas German. One of the obvious ones is words like die Stinkkatz, which literally means the stinking cat. They saw this little fluffy thing that was walking around and looked like a cat, but
that's not a word. That's not a word that you use in German ever. Stinkkatz. I don't think that's in the encyclopedia. I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure. Let's go.
Really had a bad smell, so they literally called it stinking cat. It's something very uniquely Texan.
I'm pretty sure we just call it Stinktier.
Keine Wagen, so der Herbst und seine Frau und die Jungen sind bei Fuß.
Texas German is really hard to find these days. If you
paid attention to it, let's hear it again. Here's what she did.
Really hard to find these.
Seine Frau und die Jungen.
Did you hear that? Seine Frau, you know, she rolled the R, which is nowadays very uncommon in Germany. So it's funny, like I said, I guess because they've been separated. You know, they grew up separately from where German is normally spoken. They still have some old traditions, because oftentimes in the past in Germany, 100 years ago, it was very common for people. In some places more than others, I'm sure, but in general, it was very popular for people to roll the R, the R.
Texas German is really hard to find these days. If you go to 9-pin bowling alleys, if you go to particular types of social clubs like dancing clubs, shooting clubs, card playing clubs, specifically in areas like New Braunfels or in Fredericksburg or in Schulenburg or Freiburg or in Comfort, you can go to feed stores, you can go to hardware stores, and if you're lucky, you run into people who speak Texas German with you.
This is great. I guess these are some of the candidates that he's talking about. The people that speak German. It's so funny. Even though they speak German, they don't look like the old Germans. I can, if you ever go to Germany and look at the old people here, they look nothing like them. I mean, first of all, none of them wore sunglasses. That's the first thing. None of them were hats. I don't think I've ever seen an old man here in Germany wearing a hat. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I actually like that. It's pretty cool. Now, okay, maybe the one on the left is is the closest if you take away the chain, simply because his pants are so high up. But other than that, yeah, they look nothing like German old people. Now, this was a really interesting video. I'm not gonna lie. Speaking Texas German, you can tell, and you can tell that they grew up separately from Germany. They've kept old traditions. They've kept old words. I guess Texas German is one of those places where it's because it's not close to Germany, and it's not in a place. German is not only spoken in Germany. First of all, German is also spoken in places such as Switzerland and Austria. But I guess they get updated, over the time, and the way that we speak and the way that they speak, and the vocabulary. But I guess it always stays the same in Texas German. That's why you still have these, and he even said 1840. This is why you still have these very old traditions and these very old words that they still use, just because I guess it's never been updated, right? Because it's not their main language. So yeah. If you've actually met a Texan who speaks German, definitely let me know. I'm curious. And I hope you have a good one. See ya.